Now the Vipassana part is, Vipassana means contemplation. Contemplation. As you just now from the parable, you know that the mind is always contemplating the six sense objects, and it's always going out to the six sense doors. So contemplation comes naturally. However, in Vipassana practice, we have to train the mind to look inwards. The mind, the attention of the mind is always drawn outwards. And so we know the external world very well, especially the world of the five senses. The seeing, the hearing, the smelling, taste and touch. And so but we don't reverse the light. We don't see the opposite direction. We don't look inside. And because of that, we don't know our inner self. We only know the outer world and what we take to be the self. Now when our attention is turned outwards, then we take the self to be this body and this thinking mind, the thoughts. So this mind and this body, lifetime after lifetime, we have been taking to be the self. But this is the mortal self, the mortal part of us that always dies. After a certain period, it dies, and then it's born again. It ages, sickens, and then it dies. And if we keep taking only this mortal part to be ourself, then we are always in this cycle of existence. And this cycle of existence, the first noble truth says, is suffering, dukkha. So when we reverse our attention and look inwards, we are trying to look for our inner self. There is an inner part of us which is immortal. What the Buddha calls the unconditioned, the unborn, the uncreated. And what in other religions sometimes they call as the God nature. For example, in the Bible it is stated, man is made in the image of God. It is not the mortal part of us. It is not the body. It is not the mind. It is the immortal part of us within. So that is why we always try to look within, always focus our attention within. Try to anchor it on the feeling of that self. This feeling of a self is a very kind of illusory thing. It gives rise to the concept of an ego, that I, that self. But that self, it has two, as I mentioned just now, two aspects, the mortal part and the immortal part. And if we only know the mortal part, then we are always in this round of rebirth. And so we want to know the immortal part of us. And if we know the immortal part of us, we go back to our source. That is why when we meditate on the self, slowly when we are able to concentrate the mind, when we are able to get some control over our mind, then we try to channel our attention back to the source. That is the aim of meditation, for us to go back to our original source, to our immortal nature. So, in the Vipassana part, every day we are conscious of what is happening around us. We are conscious of seeing, of hearing, smelling, taste, touch and thoughts. But usually we don't have sati. And what is this sati? Sati is often translated as mindfulness. But it is not mindfulness of the six objects of the six consciousness. Because that one you don't have to make an effort to be conscious of the six objects of mindfulness. It happens all the time. It happens naturally, just like just now the parable of the six animals. We are always pulled by these six objects of the six consciousness. We don't have an effort, we don't have to make an effort to be aware, to be conscious of these six objects. Our attention is always pulled out to these six objects of consciousness. What we have to be mindful about is always to remind ourselves that this body and this mind is not the real self. It is the mortal part of us. And it is the part where we have the feeling of this person. I am so and so. You have a name, you have a form. But when we practice sati, we keep on reminding ourselves that whatever is happening in our consciousness, that is just phenomena that is happening naturally. So every day, every moment of your wakeful state, you just keep reminding yourself, this is body and this mind is not I, is not mine, is not myself. This is not I, this is not mine, this is not myself. And then if we are aware of that, then we try not to get involved. We try to observe how the ego always surfaces, how the ego is always trying to reassert itself. For example, when you hear somebody say something unpleasant, immediately you get angry, and then you see your ego working. You start thinking, I can't stand this. I have to do something. Or what do I deserve to be told off like that, or whatever. So you see the mind is seething, is frothing, because the ego of that ego. So when you recognize that ego, then we try not to react. We just see it is just this ego, this Satan in us, this Mara in us, that is trying to assert itself. So every day we try to do that. And if we are able to do that, then we slowly let go. We let go of reacting. We don't react. We just observe. We don't react. It's not easy. In other words, you are trying to behave like an enlightened person. And if you start behaving like an enlightened person, slowly, you will become an enlightened person. If you don't behave this way, then you are always that same person. If you are just mindful of the 6 objects of consciousness, then all history repeats itself. When an object impinges on your senses, then a feeling arises, then perception arises after that, and volition and thinking and all that, and it repeats, and the thought proliferates. One thought multiplies into 10 thoughts, 10 thoughts multiplies into 100 thoughts, and then you see that ego in action. So this is the real letting go. Letting go is not the outside. Letting go is the inside. It's very difficult to do. It's much easier just to observe what's going on in the world.